There we go. Hello, friends. Welcome to Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. I'm Ed Charbeneau, and not with me today is John Bristowe. I think John may be on vacation, so we had a little bit of a miscoordination of streaming efforts here, but it's all good. I've got some news articles to share with you all today. It'll probably be a shorter than usual show, but I've got some interesting stuff lined up. So, looks like 1080p available. Won't be able to watch. I'm not sure what we're streaming at, but you should be able to boost those that up to. I think it's Twitch that's limiting us below 1080, if anything. I know StreamYard's got us streaming out at 1080. But welcome to the chat room. Hey, Chad Green's here, and along with Surly Dev and a lot of other regulars. Welcome back. This week, I've got a lot of Microsoft news. .NET Standard, or sorry, .NET 6. So it's the time change day today. So I'm going to be a little out of it. It's .NET 6 Preview 2 is out. So if you're following all of the MAUI stuff, the user interface, multi-platform user interface stuff that is out, make sure you follow the .NET previews. So .NET Preview just shipped. That also means ASP.NET Preview 6, or ASP.NET 6 Preview 2 has shipped as well. So a lot of build time, performance improvements. This is going to bring down the development time by quite a lot. So this is your compile time when you're building and checking out your applications that you're working on. This is really a big deal on Blazor. So you can see the incremental build times on Blazor, the clean and build and incremental build are much, much smaller than they were before. I'm wondering how this will affect my Visual Studio performance, because I've seen Visual Studio's been kind of hanging here and there. So looks like we've got some awful buffering going on. No buffering issues here. Surly Dev, I think you might want to refresh. So Chad says all is good on his end. Yeah, so the Blazor story just keeps getting better with every release. We get something new out of .NET 6, and we have AOT coming in .NET 6, and a lot of other really great things. One of the things with MAUI that I think is really cool is the desktop deployment of Blazor is coming along nicely. And you can see we've got run your Blazor apps natively on the Mac OS, which is cool. So run those native on Mac and Windows. My friend and coworker Sam Basu has done quite a bit of work with this MAUI stuff, checking it out. So if you get a chance to follow him on Code It Live, make sure you hit the follow button on the stream and check out what Sam's been talking about, because he's presented a few times on all the MAUI stuff. So lots of excitement there. This is a huge blog post, by the way. I'll post that in chat so you can all check out the .NET preview goodness. Make sure you update your Visual Studio preview as well if you're going to be checking any of that out. And we can't talk about .NET without talking about ASP.NET. So there's a lot of updates coming out in Preview 2 for Blazor again. There's some SignalR and, of course, MVC updates in here as well. One of the main things that I saw in here that was really cool, I'll try to find their example of it, is the inference of generic components in Blazor. So we've got a new feature. This is something that was requested a while back in the early days of Blazor, and this is going to help out with content templates. So any type of templated components that you'll find in Blazor, we remember in MVC with Razor, we had that really nice Fluent API that we could use to chain our component architecture together, and we got a lot of rich IntelliSense while we were nested within hierarchical groups of components. It looks like that type of feature is going to come to Blazor with .NET 6. So this short blog post here about this topic of infer components, generic types from ancestor components, might seem like a small improvement, but this is actually going to be a huge deal, I believe, in productivity on Blazor. So keep your eye on that one. The examples given in the blog post here, I think, undersell how useful this will be. This one, by the way, is a little bit ahead of the Visual Studio tooling, so make sure you check out the note of false errors coming up in there. Preserving pre-rendered state in Blazor apps. This is all really cool stuff as well. It's great to see the Blazor framework just pushing along, and Daniel Roth not letting us down with .NET 6. Speaking of .NET, I know quite a few of you are .NET fans that are watching the show. So I thought this was really cool. And apparently the chat on Reddit agrees as well that I didn't quite understand that C# could be as powerful as it is. Somebody's actually taken and written a pretty darn good Nintendo Switch emulator in C#. So I thought this was really interesting. It's not often that you see this type of stuff written in C#, so I pasted that in chat so you can check it out. And it's nice to see you, Michael Crump, in the chat room as well. It's been a long time, my friend. Haven't seen you in a bit. Checked out your stream from time to time, though. Yeah, so this is apparently this is able to run even the latest Switch games. I haven't tried it out myself yet, but I was giving it a good read on Reddit here. It's also open source and on GitHub, so you can check out the source code to this, but completely written in C#. They must be doing a lot to make sure this is performant, so it'd be really interesting for me to go dig around in here and look at what they're doing as far as optimizing their code. I don't know what they're using for graphics processing and whatnot. I haven't quite gotten time to dig into all of it, but I just found this really, really cool because you don't normally see game emulators written in .NET. So cool stuff there. Again, more Microsoft news. We got a ton of Microsoft news today. Microsoft is always been on the bleeding edge of the AR and VR space, and they had a big press conference a couple weeks ago, and we've got some new demo videos of how they're integrating HoloLens with the mesh ecosystem, and using this to provide tooling for virtual reality and augmented reality applications. There's some kind of future forward videos that they released alongside of this. We can throw one of them up here on the screen for a second just to see what those look like. What I found really interesting about this is that they seem to be on a similar trajectory of Facebook, and Facebook is doing the same type of work but from a totally different perspective. Oops, that's an interview. That's not the video I was looking for. This is the one I was looking for here. So this is the type of previews they were showing. We'll mute that while I talk. We see these type of videos all the time from Microsoft, and these are really good for getting across the kind of common message that they want to put out towards what the future of applications looks like. And Alex Kipman, he's really enamored with the AR stuff and believes it is the future of computing. And I've said myself that I think it's the next big thing since mobile. So some near future, it looks like we're going to have a lot of augmented reality devices working together. It's not just head-mounted applications, but also PC and mobile-related things. So all of those are being brought together with Microsoft Mesh and their social network that's built into that. All of that metadata gets kind of brought together so you can interact and work collaboratively on projects. And Facebook is doing something similar, but it's coming from a gaming perspective, not a business perspective. So they're building a very similar set of tools that is mainly for gaming right now, but I could see that easily evolve into other stuff. So if you're interested in any of this stuff, make sure you check out our Thursday stream. Alyssa Nicole and I have been doing some VR development, and the tools for this are really pretty interesting. So let's actually take a look at one of the things that we covered on the show last week. I'll just give you a quick clip here. It's kind of awkward being in a VR headset and streaming at the same time, but it's been quite a bit of fun. So when we're both in the VR space together, what I find really interesting about this is not only can we play a game in the same space together, but Alyssa and I can actually build 3D models and code in the same space together at the same time. So you can think of this as a Visual Studio live share type of experience, but in a VR setting. So we're able to not only see each other's code, but drag around blocks of code and interact with each other as we build things. So it's kind of a bizarre experience, but you can see us working side by side here, editing code together, dropping in code blocks, and she's sharing a virtual space with me at the same time. So part of the presentation that Alex gave for the Microsoft stuff using Mesh was a lot similar to the description of that experience in Facebook Horizon, where Alyssa and I are sharing a space. It feels like you're in a personal space with someone in visiting them in person, but you're actually in a virtual environment. So I think this is kind of the bleeding edge of where the future of our tech is going, and I think it's really cool to see that type of stuff happening. So keep an eye on those two spaces. A lot of people have asked me about this one. This is something that we saw come up with the Blazor community when Blazor first launched Blazor server side, and somebody's written about it again, which is always great because this technology keeps changing so fast that the versions that people are using in these articles get outdated very quickly. So this is an article about switching Blazor server to Blazor WebAssembly at runtime. So pop the article in chat there if this is something that you would find interesting. You might want to take a look. So this example's got code samples and how and why you would want to do these things. I think it's pretty cool depending on what your scenario is. You might want to set up your application to run server side if it has the type of user that's maybe hardwired and they want really fast response times, but then you also have the agility to switch them over to WebAssembly if you maybe detect they're on a mobile device or you want to send them off to WebAssembly for a type of connection that might be mobile and intermittent. So this is another example of how flexible the Blazor application framework is, and you can hot swap between those WebAssembly and server Blazor applications on the fly. So very cool stuff there. Oh, it looks like I forgot a link here during my notes about the Facebook VR stuff, but this picture alone versus the video I showed you with Alyssa and I feel very familiar to me. So you get sometimes you're sharing physical space with avatars and whatnot, but having somebody in the space with you is a unique experience for AR and VR. So that's pretty cool stuff. CSS Grid is something that I've been learning and streaming about the last month here. And I keep finding really great resources on CSS Grid. I thought this was a really fun take on it. If you've been able to join me on any of my streams where I talked about CSS Grid and Flexbox this month, you'll see that I shared a lot of resources from CSS Tricks. They've got some really fantastic posters and whatnot. This falls in line with that same type of resource, where it's a very graphical representation of how CSS Grid works. And this one has unicorns. So if you're into unicorns and CSS Grid, then it's a double win for you. What can I say? But this is super helpful if you are the type of person like me that needs strong visuals to get what's going on with your CSS code. This breaks it down and shows you some of the different aspects of CSS Grid, like templated code areas, how to handle gap, spans, and how to start and end and float your grid cells. And I think it's really well done. It gives you an excellent way to kind of transition over from maybe a WPF app to an HTML application. We see a lot of people coming from the Windows desktop and Xamarin, interested in Blazor, want to check out Blazor, but don't know how to lay out pages. So resources like this are fantastic because there's a lot of lines that you can draw from the way XAML handles their stack panels, and Xamarin Forms grid are very similar to these. So make sure you give that a look. I thought this was a fun article. I like to follow AI tech as well, and this one's quite interesting. So this is how to fool state-of-the-art AI, and you'll find that it's actually pretty funny how simple something can throw off AI. These things are generally trained for a specific function. So if you go in and kind of throw them a curveball, you can manipulate the outcome of that AI. So here's one that is just writing kind of like a Post-it note over an apple, the fruit, if you're listening and not watching, the fruit apple. And they've written the word iPod on a Post-it and stuck it over the apple, and now it's identifying the photo as an iPod. So it's a matter of the algorithm picking the stronger probability, and it must be doing some kind of OCR here, and that's trumping the photograph of the apple. So it's choosing iPod over it. So there's a lot of these attacks, they call them, that are outlined in the article here, and they're pretty comical in the sense of it's awkward what kind of results the algorithm's coming up with, and it's funny, but there could be serious implications to this type of thing. If this is AI that's, say, driving a car and it's misrepresenting something, a sign on the road or a physical object in the road as something else. So here they've got a chainsaw, which they've drawn dollar signs around, and now that chainsaw is being identified as a piggy bank. It's just an interesting read on AI tech in general and how these things can be gamed. There was, I think, a team that did some work on this last year or the prior year that was trying to spoof how the AI on autonomous vehicles worked, and painting various lines on the road and things that would make the cars pull off the road unexpectedly and things like that. It was being done in like a white hat type of environment, but still these unexpected consequences of AI, I think, are super interesting. And then finally, I talk a lot about UI stuff because I work for Progress Telerik and we specialize in UI stuff. And it's always good for me to keep an eye on what the latest trends in UI are going to be. And I thought this was a good read about where visual design trends are going for 2021. It's a good read because it gives you kind of a concept of where we came from, where we're going. So you kind of get the idea of how we got here. And this starts with, quote, all the morphisms. So you start with kind of the classic Apple skeuomorphic design, and it kind of works you up the timeline to where we're headed now. It's kind of interesting. We're getting back in this pattern of a design that reminds me a lot of Windows. Was it Windows 7 that had that glassy UI, that arrow theme? That seems to be what we're pivoting back towards a little bit. The author talks about how Material UI is a great template, but it's a little too templated. It doesn't have any unique characteristics that make the application feel like it is custom. So it just feels very generic, like an OS theme would. So he talks about how some of these kind of like organic images and things are being brought into these designs. While they're not being brought in literally, they're being brought in and blended in as like a blurred background. So Michael Crump says you can actually still download and use the arrow theme for Windows 10. It's coming back in style, so it all comes around, and I think you could probably throw it on your PC these days and just say, "Look, I've got the new hip thing." It looks like this is also something that might be part of the latest Mac update. I'm not a big Mac person, so you guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the latest update might have some of this blurred glass type of look being brought into it. So this seems to be where things are heading. It was really well laid out and thought out article and video here. These UI patterns continue to evolve all the time, but there's only so much you can do with these things before they start looking very familiar to what we've already had before. So we'll see if the prediction for this holds true. I think there's just some really good points in this in general. Whether you're going to follow this to a T and implement it like the author says, or if you're just looking for places to get some kind of influence on what your next design for your app should be. There were just some really good notes in here about bringing some uniqueness back to your designs and your application. So I thought that was a good read, and that is all I've got. Again, John couldn't join me today, so we're going to run a little short on the show. But thank you all for joining me so I could talk about the latest and greatest reads that I saw on the internet. And we've got amazing shows coming up for you all week long on the Code It Live channel. On Wednesday, we have the Blazor Power Hour, where I will discuss some Blazor topic for at least an hour, see if we can build something or learn about something specific, and we'll narrow that down and laser focus on it and get it done in an hour. We also have TJ with React Wednesday talking about React. We have our VR show on Thursday. So Alyssa and I will be in Facebook Horizon on Thursday. And thanks for the shout out there, Michael Crump. I enjoyed sharing the links with you guys as well. So Thursday is our VR pair programming. I think we're going to start a game soon, so that should be fun. We're going to do some level design stuff. We're going to get into like some game dev things that I've done back in the day. So I'll be giving Alyssa some advice on how to get started with game design and lay out a level for a game, how to create like focal points in a level, and design so that the space looks big and inviting and fun, and not linear and boring. So we'll create some cool stuff there. We might make maybe some Telerik ninja themed game. We'll see. And it's all going to be in VR, so it'll be a lot of fun. There'll be some coding as well as the weeks go on. There's a lot of cool scripting tools built into that system that we've just started to touch the tip of the iceberg on. And then Friday, I have on my channel the Blazor Power Hour. Or sorry, the Blazor State Has Changed. Too many shows, folks. And then Alyssa has her UI Fridays on Code It Live. So make sure you stick with us all week long. We got a lot of fun stuff here. Thanks for joining me this afternoon, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.